Hi there, Bob Gager from Adobe here with another installment of Ask Bob, where I get to answer questions posed by our Elements fans. In our recent call for questions, I actually got a couple questions about green screens. Kind of interesting. Green screen is typically a video technique to be able to superimpose a background. But there's a couple people this month that asked about how do I remove a green screen background from my photos and put a different background in place. So I'm going to show you how to do that in Photoshop Elements. Let me switch over to Photoshop Elements. So here I've got an Adobe stock photo of a green screen pose to demonstrate this technique. I'm going to switch over to Expert mode because there's a couple tools that we're going to use for this technique that are only available here in the Expert mode of Photoshop Elements. So there's actually a couple different techniques to get rid of the green screen background and superimpose this person on top of a different background. I'm going to show you one that is actually pretty simple if you've got a good solid green screen like this, where it's really easy to remove actually any color from your photo. So over here on the left we have our toolbar. In the draw section there's one that looks like an eraser, and that of course is our eraser tool. Let me zoom in a little bit right there. There you go. That's what it looks like. So just go ahead and click on the eraser tool. And then down here in the bottom in our tool options, if your tool options are not open, all the way at the bottom is a button that will toggle the tool options open and closed. So go ahead and open up your tool options. And within the eraser section, there's actually a couple different kinds of erasers. One of them is something that we call the magic eraser. So go ahead and click on the magic eraser. And the way the magic eraser works is anything you click on, it's going to sample that color and erase that color from anywhere that color is found in your photo. Now there's a couple settings here that we need to worry about. The first one is contiguous or not. Contiguous means that when you click on a color, it's going to erase the same color as long as it's touching where you clicked. So I want to uncheck contiguous, and then anywhere I click on green is going to erase the green. And then I just go ahead, put my mouse over somewhere on that green and click. And you can see Photoshop Elements will find everywhere that green exists and erase it. Now, you noticed it didn't erase all of the green. There's still a little green in her hair. That's because we have another setting down here called tolerance. And what tolerance does is control how close the color has to be to the color that you clicked on. So if I change it to, say, 0, let me undo my delete, undo magic eraser to get my green back. If I leave it on 0, that means it's not very tolerant, and it's only going to erase shades of green that are exactly matching the green I click on. So if I click here, you can see I've now got much more green left behind, like around the fingers and around the hair, that kind of stuff, because I set it to not be very tolerant. Let me undo again, bring my green back. If I set it to be very tolerant, up here on the top end of the range, and click, you can see it's actually very aggressive in finding other shades that are close to green and deleting those. So it did a really good job of getting rid of the green around the fingers. It also got rid of that green in her hair, but it left some kind of raggedy edges, and I don't really like that. So you can play around with this tolerance setting to get it to work as you like it. And it's going to be different for every photo. So there isn't one number that's the magic number to use all the time. Depending upon how solid of a green screen background you have versus sort of how fine edges you have, you're going to want to mess around with this tolerance slider to get the results that you want. I'm going to set it down here, in the 60s, 70s somewhere. Go ahead and click, and you can see we've got a pretty good job. Actually, maybe I want to get rid of a little more green. Let me undo. Go a little higher, maybe around 100 or so, and just click on the green. And now we've got a pretty good job of getting rid of that green most everywhere. But as you can see, what happens is sometimes it doesn't get all, doesn't get all the green. There we go, let me zoom in about there. Doesn't get all the green gone, and it leaves some behind. So there's a couple things you can do. One of them is click again, maybe turn the tolerance down a little bit, maybe zoom in a little bit so we can really see where it is. Go back to my magic eraser and click around on some other greens. Well, that was kind of overly aggressive, so let me undo that and turn the tolerance kind of way down and maybe the opacity down a little so it does a little softer of an erase, and click on some of these other greens. So something like that. So that's one way to fine-tune getting rid of all of the green. Another way to fine-tune it is actually just remove the green from your picture. So what I want to do now is, instead of trying to erase the green pixels, I'm just going to get rid of the green from my image. So let me double click on my hand and go all the way back. We can see there's some green here. I'm going to open up my layers panel. So down here on the bottom, over on the bottom right, is a button called layers. Go ahead and click on that, and that's going to open this layers panel here over on the right. The first thing I want to do is add what we call an adjustment layer. So this little icon right here, let me zoom into that for you, this kind of yin-yang icon looking thing right there, is what we want to use to add an adjustment layer. So go ahead and click on that and come down to the hue saturation choice and click on that. And that's going to add one of these adjustment layers, and basically what adjustment layers are is kind of like a filter that gets applied to every layer that's below that layer in your image. So the one I picked was hue and saturation, and it allows me to adjust, well, the hue and saturation of my photo. So I'm just going to mess with saturation, and just so you know what the saturation slider does, it's a way of controlling the intensity of the color. If I crank the saturation slider way up, you can see my colors are very intense. If I crank the saturation slider down, it actually removes the color from my photo, converts it to black and white. And I can do anywhere in between to get the look that I'm after. Now, as I slide this saturation slider, you can see it's adjusting my entire photo and all the colors in my photo, and that's not really what I want. What I want to do is just mess with the greens. And so in this little pull down right here called Channel, if I click on that, switch to Greens, now all of these controls are only going to mess with the green colors in my image. And so you can see now if I crank the saturation slider up, these greens become a little more intense. If I crank the saturation slider down, these greens get converted to black and white. So this is a way to selectively remove any particular color out of your image. Now if it isn't perfect, if you have a green screen that's maybe just a slightly different tone of green, you can select multiple shades of green to control in this hue saturation slider by just clicking this little plus sign right here and then go over to your image and click on wherever the different shade of green is. And that'll add multiple shades of green the more you click to be able to control with this slider. So that's the way you get rid of the green, is just come in here in a hue saturation adjustment layer, switch to the green channel, and crank that saturation slider all the way down. We can also mess with things like lightness. We can make it darker to blend into her hair, or lighter if you want kind of a light background. I'm actually going to make it darker because I think then it just sort of nicely blends in with the rest of her hair. I can go ahead and close this dialog box now because I'm done with those adjustments. If I ever need to get it back, I can click on this little control right here, just double click that, and that's going to open it back up, and I can continue to make more adjustments if I need to. But I'm done with that, so I'm going to close it. Now we want to put a background behind this person. So we have a bunch of backgrounds that are built into Photoshop Elements. Down here in the bottom right, I can click on Graphics, and this right panel changes to my Graphics panel. And if in this first pull down I select by type, and the second pull down, the type of graphics I want are backgrounds, there's a whole bunch of graphics here that come pre-built into the product. And so you can just scroll around, find one you like. Maybe we like this one, just click it, and Photoshop Elements will download it if you've never used it before. We store all these graphics on a server so we don't fill up your hard drive with graphics that you don't use. But once you click on it, we'll download it and apply it. So maybe you like something like that, or this is actually the holiday season, so let me kind of scroll around. I know we've got some holiday type backgrounds in here as well. Let's see, where are they? There's one. Let's go ahead and click on that. See if we like that. There we go. That's kind of a nice feel. Or maybe we'll pick one of the others, maybe this one. This is kind of a cool one. Or maybe something like that if you don't like the reds. So this is a way to just add a background and drop it into Photoshop Elements. If you have your own photo that you want to use as a background, well, you can just open up that photo and drag it in as a new layer as well. So lots of different ways to add different backgrounds. And so kind of as simple as that, we can go in, we can magically erase using the magic eraser our green screen background. We can use a adjustment layer to tone down any green that's left behind. And then we can drop in a layer at the very bottom of our list of layers here, drop in a new background layer, and that will show through as the background for the image. So hopefully that helps you guys understand how to take a photo that was shot in front of a green screen and get rid of the green part and superimpose the image on top of a different background. Until next time, hope you have fun with Photoshop Elements. Take care.